This happened a few summers ago. I was 22 and studying meteorology. Every summer, I visited my grandparents' house, a wooden place surrounded by thick woods. I loved it there. The creaky floorboards and old tin roof felt familiar. It was a calm escape from my busy life. But then the thunderstorms came. On the first stormy night, I was reading notes for my classes. Then I noticed a flickering light from the attic. I thought it was a power surge, so I went back to my book. Outside, the wind howled, and the rain hit the roof hard. Suddenly, I heard something creaking in the attic. My heart raced, but I brushed it off as the old house settling. A few days later, another storm rolled in. I didn't want to think about the attic. The flickering light returned, shining more intensely, like it was syncing with the thunder. I felt uneasy, and the tapping I thought was raindrops grew louder. My pulse quickened as I felt vibrations in my bones. Summoning enough courage after the storm, I climbed the stairs to the attic. Each step creaked beneath my weight. The air was cold, and a strange pull led me to the door. I hesitated before slowly opening it. Inside, I was startled. Old family photos lay scattered on the dusty floor, pictures of people I didn't recognize. Who were these people? The next storm came a week later. I couldn't ignore that feeling anymore. As thunder rolled outside, I sat in the living room trying to study. My eyes kept drifting back to the attic door. I could almost hear whispers mixed with the storm outside. Chills crawled down my back. I could barely breathe. In a moment of dread, I finally said, "Is anyone up there?" Silence filled the space. Then came a firm knock, echoing in the stillness of the house. I froze, uncertain whether to run upstairs or flee the house. Finally, I stood up. I told myself it was all in my head. But I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. As the storm peaked with blinding flashes of light, the room fell into a sudden silence. It was an oppressive quiet, the kind that sinks in your stomach. My heart pounded. After that night, I avoided the attic. I felt it held secrets I was not meant to uncover. I still wonder what lurked there, watching me during the storms. The final storm hit a few nights later. I sat awake in bed, listening to the rain. My heart raced every time lightning illuminated the room. Then I felt it, a soft whisper, barely audible, tickling my ears. "Come play," it seemed to say. My breath caught. I felt bile rise in my throat. The whispers grew louder. They echoed in the room. "Join us." I sat up, terrified. I thought about those photos in the attic. Were they calling me? Just then, a deafening crash shook the house, followed by a loud knock on my door from the attic. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't. I felt rooted to the bed. When the storm finally ended, I knew I couldn't stay there anymore. I left the house the next day, but those whispers still haunt me. I still can't explain what happened there. And when the thunder rolls, I remember those words and wonder if they're calling me back. The weeks passed after I left my grandparents' house, but the whispers didn't fade. I returned to my routine, but every time a storm rolled in, I found myself gripping the edge of my desk, heart racing, eyes darting to the windows. My studies suffered, suffocated by memories I couldn't escape. Each clap of thunder reminded me of that night and the door that hid untold secrets. One evening I decided to seek answers. I called my grandmother. She answered, her voice warm yet wary. I asked casually about the attic, trying to mask the tremor in my tone. "There's nothing up there but old junk," she said, "and some family things." I pressed further, hoping for some clue. "What do you mean, family things?" I asked. She hesitated. "Old photographs, a trunk of clothes from your great-grandparents. I wouldn't go poking around up there, though." A shiver ran down my spine as I recalled the faces I saw in those photos. Curiosity mixed with fear. The following weekend, a storm warning was issued. I felt pulled toward my grandparents' house again. I needed to see that attic. to confront my fear. So I packed a bag and drove back, knowing I was risking another encounter with whatever was hidden there. When I arrived, the air was thick with tension. The wind rustled through the trees, and dark clouds loomed overhead. I could hear the familiar creaking of the old house as I stepped inside. It felt as if the walls held their breath, waiting for something to happen. Once again, I told myself I was just imagining things. It was only an attic filled with dusty relics. As the first drops of rain fell, I found myself staring at the attic door, the chill of the old wood taunting me. Eventually, the sound of the storm outside became a dull roar, drowning out my thoughts. I climbed the stairs, the creaking louder this time, as if warning me to turn back. When I reached the attic, I felt a strange sense of calm mixed with dread. I opened the door slowly, the hinges protesting. Inside, the flickering light returned, illuminating the chaos of scattered photos and forgotten belongings. Then, something caught my eye. A small, tarnished locket lay half buried in a pile of fabric. I picked it up, feeling its cold weight in my palm. Suddenly, a bolt of lightning lit up the room, and I heard a loud bang close by. Startled, I dropped the locket, and it tumbled open onto the floor. Inside, a tiny photo slipped out. For a moment, everything froze. That's when I saw it. The photo was of a boy with strikingly familiar features, his eyes staring directly at me. Was it a relative? My heart raced, and I felt a shiver crawl down my spine. The winds howled outside, enhancing the thunder's growl. Before I could process what I had discovered, the attic door slammed shut behind me, plunging me into darkness. The whispers rose again, hushed and pleading. "Join us." I was trapped. The darkness felt thick and heavy. I stumbled back, my heart pounding in my chest. I reached for the light switch, but there was no response. Just the sound of the storm raging outside and the whispers that surrounded me, growing louder and more insistent. "Join us." I strained to hear, trying to make sense of the voices. They seemed to echo from all corners of the attic, a chorus blending into a single haunting plea. Fear gripped me, and I fumbled for the locket on the floor. With trembling hands, I picked it up again, the weight oddly comforting. I glanced at the tiny photograph. The boy's eyes seemed alive, almost watchful. I wondered if he was trying to tell me something. Suddenly, a fierce jolt of wind rattled the window. I pulled back, my gaze darting to the attic door. I expected it to swing open, revealing my escape, but it remained shut. The storm outside intensified, with lightning illuminating the room in terrorizing bursts. With each flash, the shadows danced, and I felt eyes on me, not only from the photograph but all around. "Join us." The whispers grew urgent, a low chant that reverberated through the wooden beams. I backed away toward the far wall, slamming my eyes shut against the unsettling sight. But when I opened them again, I was not alone. In the flickering light, I saw a figure at the edge of the room, a boy, the same one from the photograph. He stood there, transparent yet distinct, gazing at me with an intensity that rooted me to the spot. I wanted to scream, to run, but I was frozen, caught between fear and a deep, inexplicable longing to understand. "Why?" I managed to choke out, my voice barely above a whisper. His mouth moved, but no sound came. Instead, the room filled with a static energy, making the hair on my arms stand on end. That's when I noticed something else. The trunk my grandmother mentioned, pushed against the wall. It was slightly ajar, slightly inviting. If the locket led me to this boy, what lay within the trunk? Questions spun in my mind, each more frantic than the last. Could it be the key to understanding who he was and why the whispers haunted me? The boy pointed toward it, his expression desperate. I knew I had to move. The pressure in the air intensified as I approached the trunk, the whispers swirling around me like a frantic wind. "Open it," they urged. I hesitated, fear flooding my senses. I felt another gust of wind tumble through the attic, rattling the very bones of the house. But I quickly steeled myself as another flash of lightning lit up the room. The boy's eyes seemed to plead for me to act. Taking a deep breath, I grasped the trunk's lid and pulled it open. That's when everything stopped. The whispers faded, leaving an uncomfortable silence in their wake. The boy faded, his form becoming less distinct, until he was gone. I looked down into the trunk, and my heart sank. Inside, nestled among the clothes and papers, were not just relics of the past, but a collection of old journals, their pages yellowed and frayed. My fingers grazed the cover of the nearest one, and a chill swept through me. I could see a name etched on its spine, the same name that matched my own. I found what I was looking for, but instead of relief, I felt a new wave of dread wash over me. I could sense that whatever I uncovered in those journals, it would change everything. Before I could pull one out, the attic door flung open and the storm roared louder. I had a choice, stay in the attic or face the storm outside. But I knew one thing for sure. This was only the beginning. I stood there, the trunk gaping open before me like a hungry maw. The storm raged on, its ferocious winds clawing at the roof, making the house creak and shudder. I felt a cold draft rush past me, sending chills racing down my spine. The journals seemed to call to me, tempting me to dive deeper into whatever mystery they held. I collected my courage and reached for the nearest journal, its leather cover rough against my fingers. I pulled it from the trunk and held it close to my chest, feeling a connection to it I couldn't explain. The whispers re-emerged, quieter now, but still persistent. "Read," they urged almost tenderly, as if coaxing a long-buried truth to the surface. Lightning struck again, illuminating the attic, and for a brief moment I swore I saw the boy standing again, just behind me, his eyes wide with anticipation. My breath quickened as I turned, but he was gone. I was alone. At least I thought I was. Sighing, I opened the journal. The first page was filled with hurried, almost frantic handwriting. The name matched mine, but the entries were dated from decades ago. I blinked at the words, trying to absorb their meaning. It spoke of dreams, strange ones, often involving dark figures and a storm that never faded. The more I read, the more familiar the emotions felt. Fear, confusion, a sense of loss I couldn't pin down. How could someone from so long ago share my fears? Then a word leaped out at me. He. It was mentioned repeatedly as a figure who stalked the dreamer. My heart raced. I skimmed to a later page, the ink smudged as if written in haste. It described a confrontation in the attic. The writer spoke of a boy with eyes like mine and a locket. The words became harder to decipher, frantic scratches filling the page as if they were written in the throes of panic. My hands shook. That was when I realized. A new shadow seemed to emerge in the corner of the attic, flickering in and out like a faulty light bulb. I turned, my heart pounding. Outside, tight flashes of lightning lit the room, as if magnifying the shadow's presence. It didn't feel quite right. The atmosphere shifted. It was suffocating. With each crack of thunder, the figure grew more defined, yet somehow more distorted. I blinked rapidly, hoping it was an illusion created by fatigue. But no, it was there, watching. The wind howled outside, and I felt a pull, as if some invisible force was beckoning me toward the shadow. I stepped back instinctively, but my feet felt glued to the floor. The whispers rose again, harmonizing with the storm. "Join us! Join us!" Then it was gone. The shadow vanished in an instant, leaving me stunned. The journal slipped from my grip, clattering against the floor. The silence that followed was deafening. I could still hear the whispers mingled with the sound of rain pounding against the walls. Had I imagined it all? Had I lost my mind? I quickly grabbed the journal and flipped through its pages. I had to understand. I had to know what was happening. Who was he? And why were the whispers threatening to drown me? Then everything went dark. The storm outside suddenly ceased, and with it, the house fell into an unsettling calm. I was not alone anymore. The attic door slammed shut with a resounding thud. Something was coming. I stumbled backward as the thud of the attic door echoed around me, my heart racing. The air felt electric, heavy with tension. I scrambled to find the light switch, but my fingers slipped against the damp wooden wall. The darkness enveloped me like a thick fog, blurring my thoughts. The journal lay open on the floor, but my attention was diverted. Something was shifting in the shadows. With each heartbeat, the whispering grew louder. "Join us." It sounded as if many voices were merging into one desperate plea, drawing me in. I tried to call out, to break the silence, but my voice caught in my throat. Instead, I listened intently, searching for a clue in the chaos. Suddenly, a low creaking echoed from the far corner. I wasn't imagining it. My instincts kicked in, and I edged closer to the sound. Through strained eyes, I searched the darkness, trying to discern what lurked beyond. My pulse quickened. Was it the boy? Was he trapped here too? "Hello?" I finally managed to whisper, the word feeling like a fragile thread in the dark. The storm had returned with a vengeance, pounding against the roof and shaking the old wooden beams. I turned my attention back to the journal. I had to know more. Clutching it in my hand brought a feeble sense of security. Turning its pages, I found more references to the shadowy figure, descriptions muddled with dread. One phrase stood out, filled with urgency. "If he comes for you, stay in the light." My mind raced. Was this what the boy had wanted to warn me about? The hair on my neck prickled. I had to keep my wits about me. Just then, a chilling breeze swept through the attic, cutting through the darkness like a knife. The chill wrapped around me, making me shiver. I turned to see a faint flicker at the edge of the room. A candle? No, it was too dim. But it was growing brighter. I stepped toward it, curiosity battling with fear. As I approached, the light seemed to pulse, illuminating a section of the attic, and I barely held back a gasp. In the light stood the boy, his features more defined now, but his expression was one of anguish. He raised a hand, pointing toward the trunk. "Help me," he whispered, his voice eerily echoing through the silence. He looked terrified, eyes wide as if he could see something I couldn't. Without thinking, I moved toward the trunk, glancing back at the boy. His face was a mask of desperation. Had he been trapped here all along? The journals weren't just about me. They were about him, who he was, and what he wanted from me. Just as I reached for the trunk, a loud clap of thunder crashed, shaking the house to its foundation. The light flickered violently, casting shadows that danced around me. In that moment, everything shifted. The boy vanished, the light extinguished, and the whispers returned, now more frantic and urgent. I felt the presence closing in, a chill wrapping around me as if fingers brushed my shoulders. Panic surged, and I bolted toward the attic door, desperate to escape. The whispers turned to screams, echoing against the walls, imploring me to turn back. As I reached for the door, it burst open on its own, revealing the dark hallway beyond. What was waiting for me out there? Was it he? I hesitated, nausea roiling in my stomach. Then, without fully understanding why, I stepped through the door, into the unknown. And that's when I heard it, footsteps behind me. The moment I stepped out of the attic, the air felt different. It was thicker and more suffocating, as if the house had absorbed the tension from the storm outside. I barely took a breath before I whipped around, convinced I would see the boy, hopefully alive, just behind me. But the hallway was empty. Hallway. Footsteps. They weren't just in my head. I could hear them now, soft but deliberate, echoing off the wooden floorboards. I turned to run, but the sound stopped abruptly. Silence flooded the hall. My stomach twisted. If someone or something was following me, they were toying with my fear. "Hello?" I called again, my voice trembling. Why did I keep saying that? Maybe it was a way to reassure myself, but deep down, I knew I wouldn't get a response. Then, faintly, I heard it again. No longer footsteps, but the unmistakable sound of a child's cry, echoing through the darkness. It was hard to tell where the sound was coming from. The floor creaked under my feet as I stepped gingerly down the hallway, keeping my back to the wall. The cries pulled me in like a magnet. I couldn't just leave. I needed to know if it was him. Maybe he was trapped somewhere. I followed the sobbing, moving toward the dim glow coming from the end of the hall. The house felt alive, shifting and breathing with every step I took. Suddenly, I stepped into a small room. It was a dusty old nursery. Toys lay scattered about, and a rocking chair swayed gently as if someone had just left it. I didn't want to think about what that meant. The sobbing stopped, plunging the room into a heavy stillness. In the corner, a small figure huddled under a blanket. My heart raced as I approached. "Are you okay?" I whispered, forcing my voice not to shake. The figure tensed, then turned to face me. It was the boy, or at least it looked like him. But his eyes were hollow, devoid of light, and the sorrow on his face morphed into something darker. "Leave," he rasped, his voice hoarse and strained. "You're not safe here." I felt a rush of cold air course through the room, and the shadows seemed to stretch towards me, twisting and warping as if they had a life of their own. I froze, my heart hammering in my chest. Had he been trying to warn me all along, or had he become something else? But I couldn't back away now. I hadn't come this far to run. "What do you mean? What's happening?" I pleaded, trying to keep him in sight as he shrank back further into the corner, shielding himself from something I couldn't see. His expression turned frantic. "He's coming!" Just as he said that, I heard a low growl from behind me. My breath froze, and instinctively I turned to face the sound, dread spilling over me like ice water. The room darkened further, shadows creeping in from all sides. I glanced back at the boy, hoping he would help, but he shook his head, eyes wide with fear. "You have to go," he shouted. And just as he did, the lights flickered, illuminating the room for a fleeting moment. That's when I saw it, an elongated figure, merging with the shadows, its features twisted and grotesque, stalking toward me. I stumbled back, my instincts screaming at me to escape. But the way out felt far too distant. I focused on the boy again. I needed to understand how to fight whatever this was. "Tell me how," I yelled desperately, but the answer never came. Instead, the creature lunged, and just like that, the shadows swallowed me whole. I jolted awake, gasping for air. For a brief moment, I thought I had escaped whatever nightmare awaited me. My heart raced as I looked around, but I was still in the nursery. The rocking chair had stopped moving, and the heavy silence pressed down on me. But the boy was gone. I scrambled to my feet, frantically searching every corner of the room. The soft sobs had vanished, replaced by a heavy, oppressive stillness. The air felt thicker now, as if it had taken on a weight of its own. I had to find a way out. I rushed toward the door, but it wasn't where it had been moments before. I blinked, momentarily stunned. The layout of the room had changed. What had once been a small nursery now felt like a maze, with walls inching closer together, closing in. Panic surged through me, and I pressed my palms against the cool, textured wallpaper, trying to center myself. "Okay," I muttered under my breath. "Think." Then I heard it. A faint, distant wail echoing through the house. It sounded more like a tortured scream than a child's cry. My instincts pulled me in the opposite direction, urging me to flee. But deep down, I felt that I had to follow it. Maybe it would lead me to the boy or a way out. I moved cautiously through the nursery, pushing aside a pile of forgotten toys. Forcing the panic down, I searched the walls for any sign of a door, a window, anything. The room felt alive, every creak and groan of the floorboards amplifying my fear. Another scream echoed, sharper this time. It was closer. I felt a raw ache in my chest, pulling me toward the sound. The shadows flickered, and the air shimmered, as if the fabric of reality was tenuous here. I felt the weight of unseen eyes on me, as if whatever had chased me before was still lurking nearby. I finally spotted a door frame emerging from the shadows to my left. Throwing caution to the wind, I dashed toward it. The door creaked open, revealing another dark hallway, but I hesitated. A flicker of movement caught my eye from the corner of the room, and I whipped around. There he was. The boy stood at the far edge of the nursery, the blanket draped over his shoulders, his hollow eyes filled with something like urgency. "Help me!" he cried, and I took a step forward. But just as I did, the shadows quivered and surged as if they were responding to his words. "Stay back," he warned, and I froze again. The walls began to vibrate, and the cries morphed into angry shouts, drowning out my ability to think clearly. Suddenly, something lunged back into view from the shadows, more aggressive than before. A dark mass, shifting and writhing, seemed to be forming into a face with exaggerated features. My heart raced as realization hit me hard. This thing fed on fear. I had to escape. I spun back toward my exit, but something slammed against the doorframe, blocking my way. It was the long shadow again, its twisted limbs reaching out to grasp me. And that's when I heard another voice rise above the chaos, an unfamiliar whisper enveloping me. "You cannot leave," it hissed, vibrating through the air. "You belong here now." My breath quickened as dread engulfed me. I turned, searching for the boy, but he had vanished. With only the creature standing in my way, the question burned in my mind. What could bind me to this place? And why? I was rooted to the spot, uncertainty wrapping around me like ivy. The shadow pressed against the doorframe, its mass swaying with an unsettling rhythm. I could almost feel its hunger, as if it thrived on my fear. My mind raced for a plan, but nothing solid formed. All I had was a primal instinct to survive. Suddenly the boy's voice echoed back to me in the dark. "Help me!" It felt like an anchor, pulling me away from the clutches of despair. I forced myself to breathe, to refocus. Maybe I could save him. In a moment of reckless courage, I shouted, "I'm coming! Where are you?" The shadow flinched for a split second as if caught off guard. I seized the opportunity and bolted toward the wall opposite the door. The sound of my footsteps thudded in the silence, a stark reminder of my existence against the dark. The shrieks of fear faded slightly into a low growl as I moved further into the maze-like nursery. I desperately searched for a sign of the boy, wondering if I could somehow reach him before the shadow caught up to me. It was only when I saw a glimmer of light emanating from a small crack in the wall that I paused again. That dwindle of illumination felt out of place here. I approached cautiously, heart beating fiercely in my chest. As I got closer, the air shimmered like heat rising from pavement. There was a door, barely visible, almost hidden by darkness. I reached out to touch it. "Stay away from the light," a soft whisper warned. The voice was different from the one that had condemned me earlier. This one was softer, like a breeze. I hesitated, my hand hovering just above the doorknob, feeling the warmth pulse beneath my fingers. What if this was an escape? As I lingered, I caught a glimpse of another shadow creeping closer. This one was smaller, slinking on the floor like a serpent. It raised its head, revealing wide, sorrowful eyes that stared up at me. It was another child, a girl this time, equally bound by fear. "Don't go in there," she pleaded. "It's a trap." My heart sank. I glanced back at the slithering shadow, which seemed to convulse with excitement, drawn in by my indecision. The walls shivered, whispering secrets that I could barely hear. The girl's warning echoed in my mind, sending chills down my spine. "Why are you here?" I asked, my voice shaky. The girl gasped, glancing at the boy's empty corner. "I was like him," she murmured. "But now—" Her voice trailed off, replaced by a chilling silence that wrapped around me again. Then something rattled behind me. The large shadow growing bolder lunged forward. I felt its icy breath on my neck, chilling me to the bone. The door cracked open just enough for that warm light to spill into the room, illuminating the edges of the dark creature. In that moment, it clicked. This wasn't just about escape. I had to choose. There was a way out, but at what cost? I looked at the girl's desperate eyes, then back at the glowing door, knowing that whatever lay on the other side could change everything. That's when I saw it, the boy standing behind the creature, eyes wide and pleading. I felt the weight of my choices pressing down on me as the shadows stirred. I had to decide fast. Would I fight for the boy or take my chance with the light? The shadow of fear loomed over me, demanding my next move. I took a quick step back, my instincts screaming at me. The girl's terrified gaze twisted my heart. I didn't want to let her down, but the boy's eyes drew me in, and I could taste the desperation in the air. "Help me!" he cried again, and the sound gutted me. The shadow loomed larger, a dark mass thirsting for my hesitation. I had to act, but what terrified me more was the thought of standing idle while both children suffered. I made a choice. I rushed towards the boy. "Hold on!" I shouted, pushing against the overwhelming fear. The shadow recoiled for a moment, a flash of confusion crossing its form. I took that slight opening as a chance to barrel straight for the boy, but the girl grabbed my arm, her grip stronger than I expected. "No, you can't!" she cried, her voice rising in panic. "If you go there, you'll be lost too." Her warning pierced through my resolve, but I couldn't let go. The boy's eyes pleaded for help, and I felt the weight of the girl's words like a shackle. I jerked free and charged forward, desperation fueling me. "Stay back," echoed the shadow, its voice a distorted echo of the boy's. "You are not welcome." I heard the door behind me slam shut as I tackled the boy, pulling him away from the creature as I squeezed my eyes shut, expecting the worst. Would it be over for me? But nothing happened. The shadows were still, suspended in a moment of suspense. I opened my eyes, finding myself in a different room. Sunlight streamed through a window, illuminating dusty toys scattered on the floor. The air felt thick, a far cry from the oppressive darkness I had just left. "Where are we?" I stammered, glancing around. The boy was beside me, wide-eyed and confused. The girl, however, hadn't followed. My stomach dropped as I understood. "There's no escaping once you're pulled in," the boy whispered, staring at the closed door behind us. "She tried to warn you." My thoughts raced. I turned to him, my heart banging against my ribs. "But this is good, right? We escaped." "No," he replied, shaking his head. "This is worse." His words left an icy chill in the room. Panic clawed at my throat as I took stock of the surroundings. Sure enough, the shadows loomed at the edges of the light, creeping ever closer. They seemed to slither with a mind of their own, eager to devour the warmth. Somewhere I heard a faint echo of laughter. I couldn't tell where it came from or who it belonged to, but it sent a shiver down my spine. That's when I spotted it, a tattered photograph on a nearby shelf. It showed 3 children standing together, the same girl from the nursery among them. A new wave of dread washed over me as I realized their smiling faces were all too familiar. I felt a chilling realization creep in. There were more secrets in this place than I wanted to find. Would I ever be free? I turned back to the boy, his face fading into worry. Suddenly everything went dark. I woke again to a familiar sensation, the weight of darkness pressing down on me. My heart hammered as I fought to take stock of my surroundings. I wasn't in the nursery anymore. The air felt stagnant, heavy, wrapping around me like a cocoon. Gradually, the outlines of the room began to emerge. A dimly lit space filled with old furniture draped in white sheets. Had I escaped the creature? I pushed myself up, confused and disoriented. The boy was at my side, his face shadowed, but his eyes still glowing with that same urgency. "You should have stayed in the light," he said, his voice strained. Is this where we were before?" I asked, glancing around frantically. The remnants of the nursery came to mind, the boy, the girl, and I felt a pang of loss for her innocence and warning. The shadows coiled in the corners of the room, lurking just beyond the light, watching us with hungry anticipation. "Things aren't what they seem," he muttered, almost to himself. "You don't understand." My pulse quickened. "What do you mean? We were supposed to be safe. I thought we escaped." The boy shook his head, his expression grim. "We're still trapped in this place, just trapped in another layer now. The shadows are always hungry. They feed on what we fear, what we long for." He seemed lost in thought before adding, "And they'll stop at nothing." I stood up, adrenaline coursing through me. "Then we need to get out of here," I declared, trying to banish the despair creeping in. "There's got to be a way." As I spoke, I noticed a door at the far end of the room, unassuming yet promising. A flicker of hope ignited within me. The boy stepped back, a visible tension in his shoulders. "That door leads deeper into the darkness, I think. It might even lead to him." His voice trembled, recalling the power that had shadowed our encounters. "You must choose wisely." "Choose? What do you mean?" I asked, barely keeping my voice steady. My anger for the creature grew as it seemed to revel in my confusion. "Do we face it together? Whatever it is, I can't leave you here." "But you can't help me if you don't know the truth. It's in the stories, those journals," he insisted, looking toward me. "But only one of us can find the way out now. You need to decide." His words hit hard, practically knocking the air out of my lungs. What do you mean? You want me to leave?" Just listen. If you go through that door, you might end the cycle. Stop the shadows. I can't go with you, but you can." He stepped back again, more determined this time. "Don't look back. Promise me." The chill of his plea bit deep, echoing in the memories I'd experienced with him and the girl. I had to confront my fears, or we'd all remain trapped within this house of echoes forever. "I promise," I managed to say, my throat tight. "But I'll come back for you." As I approached the door, the weight of the dark pressed in, as if the shadows had grown restless. I took a deep breath, ready to oppose whatever lay beyond. I grasped the door handle and turned it slowly, steeling myself for the darkness that awaited. The door swung open, but instead of the expected silence, it revealed a howling storm. The air vibrated with an unnatural energy, warping the light around me, but within it, I could hear familiar voices rising above the chaos. The whispers returned, mingling with the cries of children. "Join us! Join us!" The words wrapped around me like vines, pulling at my essence as I stepped into the storm. A twist of fear and yearning swept through me, a whirlwind of raw emotion. I stumbled into the void, feeling the child's small hand clasp mine for just a moment, grounding me. I shut my eyes, whispering a silent farewell to him, a promise that I would not let the darkness consume us entirely. I took a step deeper into the storm, letting its wind carry me through twisted memories and forgotten dreams, pulsing with the memories I hadn't yet uncovered. Then I felt a grip on my shoulder. I turned, half expecting the boy. A familiar face peered out from the swirling darkness. It was the girl, her expression both sorrowful and fierce. "Come with us," she said, her hand extended toward me. I hesitated, uncertainty washing over me. The shadows danced, beckoning me deeper. Was this the way back? Or was it another trap? Even as the storm raged, I lingered at the precipice, caught in an eternal question with no answer. Would I discover the truth behind the darkness, or fall into the abyss alongside them? Only the whispering winds knew.